As Thomas said, I work at Vocon. I'm a senior workplace strategist there. Today we're going to talk about what it takes to build workplace, and what does workplace really mean, and how can it be meaningful to employees. How many of you have small businesses or have employees, somebody who reports to you? I love it. It's a room full of like independent contractors. That makes me happy. As I said, I am a workplace strategist, which means I study the workplaces of our clients. My team does a lot of discovery around how people work, how people share information within an organization, and then we help structure new workplace to best support the way work flows in an organization. Before Vocon, I had the great fortune to work for some pretty cool places. Herman Miller, if anybody knows who they are, they make that cool Aran chair that everybody knows. I've worked at Apple and also at Steelcase, so some cool places. This is my brag slide. These are some of the clients I've worked with. Nobody cares. I make my guy put it in there because it makes me feel good, but so what is my passion? Because really that's when you get to creative people, it is really all about passion. My passion is not creative at all. It makes me sad to be in a room of really creative people when my passion is really about creating workplace. But it really truly is what I am passionate about every day. I want to help our clients really reveal who they are as an organization, what their mission is, and what their brand is, and how they communicate that to employees, to customers, to their clients is really, really important to the work that I do. So that's my professional passion. You're right, you need the ah moment too, right? This is my personal passion. So on your name tags it says if I didn't have to go to work today, I would be driving a motorhome through the South, going to every animal shelter I could find and finding puppy dogs like that one. That's Leo. He has been with me for 5 years. He's my rescue companion from the beaches of Puerto Rico, where he lived with a homeless man, and now he tortures me every day. So at Vocon, because we're a creative firm, these are our 4 values. And I love that K&P has their values right there. I don't know if anyone noticed that. It was one of the first things that I saw. Super, super cool, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But at Vocon, we believe that every project can make life better. Well, it's architects and designers. How are you like improving life? We're not like building wells in Africa. We're not. Well, sometimes we do that, but we're not, how are we making life better? And the way I think about it is, if you get a little bit of joy at work, I made your life better. We spend a lot of time at work, so how do we start to make life better for our clients and for the employees that work there? So starting to understand how do we create space that brings joy and a little bit of levity to spaces. So this is Libby Glass in Toledo, Ohio. A chandelier designed completely out of their wine glasses. Just a little bit of creativity. Just that little reminder of making life a little bit better for employees. Strong relationships inspire great work. We are in a relationship-based firm. It's one of the things that our team really prides themselves on doing. We build relationships with our clients. We're not there to design spaces. We're not there to paint walls. We are there to understand how an organization shares information, what their culture is, and then how do we start to reveal that and celebrate that in the space. So this is Goodyear in Akron, Ohio. And this is their new global headquarters. This is really about that idea of really celebrating space and helping clients be better. The other thing we do is push boundaries. So I'm gonna call out Camille, my researcher. We are constantly looking for the next thing. What is really driving work around the world? And how do we start to implement that in Cleveland, Ohio? So you think about some of those great marketplaces, Hong Kong, London, where work, all the Northern European countries, where they push the boundaries of work every day. how do we start to imbibe some of that creativity of workplace into our work here in Cleveland as well? So this is a client that we worked on in New York City, a small tech company. How do we start to how do we start to understand what they do and then bring in a more kind of global feel to their space? And then the last thing that we all believe in is only together can we give it our all. We are a very team-based environment, which is very interesting. You would think that architecture and design is a very solitary kind of behavior. Somebody who sits in front of a computer in that AutoCAD drawing, who's there for hours and hours and hours. But we are really a team-based organization. And we believe that creativity really drives the best value for our clients. So we work in a very collaborative environment, and we really do value the opinions of others. We really are a collective. No one makes decisions by themselves. We really believe in more brains make better projects. This is a very large accounting firm that we do a lot of work with around the world. And that's really what we're looking to do, is how do we really move organizations forward? So that's my little advertisement for me and for Vocon. What you really care about is what's going on in the world of work. So what I want to take you through is a couple of different things that we see happening in the world of work. Especially for creative people, I think this is a really interesting statistic, that 25% of your daily satisfaction at work is made up of the actual physical environment that you reside in. And if you start to really consider that, how many people have worked in a really crappy office? Oh, you all, now, which is why you all work for yourselves now. I totally get it. We gotta make a note of that, right? Crappy office leads to entrepreneurism. What's interesting here is, you get a little bit of a boost for individuals, but where new workplace and well thought out workplace actually starts the boost is when you start to work in groups. And that's where the creativity and the innovation comes from. So how do you do that? How do you know how to build the right space? Because that's really the first key to this. So we think about balancing this idea of collaborative and individual work. If you've ever worked in a space that's really wide open and it's really noisy, and how many people have been in that environment, those low cube walls that everyone hates, but is totally on trend right now and everybody thinks it's amazing. How do you start to balance individual and collaborative behavior? Because the pendulum's swaying really far to that really open environment where everybody had to work together. We've got to all be together. But what we started to realize is that individual work is just as important, just as critical as that collaborative teamwork. So we are starting to see trends in workplace that provide more private spaces, more individual kind of heads down spaces mixed within those really wide open spaces to start to understand where that balance is. The next one is really around promoting knowledge share. That's what we're doing every day. When I go to the office, it's not because I am sitting at my computer, typing a letter and doing something very solitary. It's that I have something to contribute to the organization to move it forward every day. And each of you do the same thing, whether you're doing it as an individual, working with your clients, or you are working on a large project team, you're sharing your knowledge. So I learn something at work every day. And I hope I teach my team things every day. I don't, but ideally I would. So how does that knowledge share flow through an organization? Who are those people? It's one of the things that we like to find out when we're doing research and discovery at the beginning of a project. Who are the people who are your tribal leaders? I don't care about your vice presidents. I don't care about people sitting behind a private office behind a closed door in a private office. Where do I go when I need to know something? Who are the people who know stuff in your organization? Those are the people we like to start with, because they're the ones who understand how knowledge flows through an organization. And then, as I was saying, that pendulum of collaborative kind of is out here right now, and we're in these crazy work environments that are super rowdy and really loud. But how do we start to create space for focus? Because Vocon is a creative firm, we test and torture ourselves all the time. One of the things that we did was we measured how we all spend time together. We spend about 40% of our time doing collaborative work, 40% of our time doing individual work, and about 20% of the time socializing. Socialization is a huge part of work. It used to be frowned on. It was the water cooler talk. Oh, those people over there gossiping. It's a critical part of how we've actually built trust-based relationships with each other. So socialization freaks clients out when we talk about it. How much time do you spend socializing? They're like, none. And I'm like, that's too bad. Because how do you get to know each other? How do you build trust? How do you and I, who've never met before, work on a project together when he's going, this guy doesn't know anything he's talking about. I don't trust him to do anything. So the socialization at work is a huge part of it. Getting back to what I was actually talking about. So when we start to study organizations and we understand how they behave in a collaborative and how they behave in that more solitary, we can start to design spaces that really help individuals focus, because that is really the rhythm of work, if you think about it. We move back and forth between those two behaviors. We go into group work and we innovate. I hate the word collaboration, even though it's on my slide. And I hate the word innovation, because they're just these like big gray words that don't really mean anything, and everybody throws them out there and then they think they're brilliant. One of our corporate goals is to innovate. I'm like, okay, so how do you do that? Well, you don't know what you're, so makes me crazy. Anyway, so understanding how organizations flex between those two behaviors is really critical. So for a creative firm, and I would bet for most people in this room, your percentages would look very similar to mine, 40, 40, 20. We're working with an engineering firm right now. I was talking to a guy, he's 95% solitary, because he's an engineer and he's a writer and he writes instruction manuals on how to put stuff together, which would bore me to tears. But it's what he's good at. So his workspace, he could never survive in mine, and I could never survive in his. So how do we start to customize those spaces for people? Next up is this new world of work, this understanding of how do we start to support the task that people are performing on a daily basis. We're not shoving people into these like cubes that are one size fits all, and I know that that's not ideal, but we're going to hope for the best for your performance. How do we get people to understand this new world of work and then break the old habits and start to embrace new ones? So how do we know when it's the right time to change? Many of you are either small business owners or work on your own, so this one is really for those big corporations, sorry to say. But understanding when it's the right time to change is really about putting the function of an organization first. So when in our work, we look a lot at how, as I said, groups share information back and forth, and then we look at how difficult it is to actually do that. So where did those groups end up? And a lot of organizations churn people through their real estate in very awkward, haphazard ways. Oh, you guys are a team of 12? Well, there's 12 seats over there, and I know you work with them, but we don't really care about that. You just need to go sit over there. And so a lot of organizations have broken all of these adjacencies. All of these moments of knowledge share have now been fractured across some real estate. So when it gets really bad, that's when they call us. So understanding what the function of an organization is really critical. The next one is technology. I see lots of technology. We've all got, we all talk about, oh, our phones could have launched the rocket and to the moon and 69, okay. That's all great, but how do we make it work harder? So understanding the technology tools of an organization are really critical, and how do they rely on those tools? And how do those tools cause them pain? Because technology has not saved us from experiencing difficulty at work. So because technology expands in that kind of 18-month cycle, and workplace expands in like a 30-year cycle, technology actually starts to cause us pain within spaces as well. So understanding how organizations leverage technology as a tool to support their work is also really important. And then living the brand. How many of you have walked into a space that is just devoid of brand? I love this space because I know what I have a mental picture in my head of the type of aesthetic that you drive in your photography. I get it. I understand it just by living here or being here for a few minutes. How many of you have ever been in a space that doesn't communicate that? You walk in, I know you do, Debbie. You walk in and it's devoid of anything. Like there's maybe a logo on a wall and that's about it. And you don't feel connected. And if you don't feel connected, imagine going to work there every day. It would be really, really awful. So one of the examples is Libby Glass. Their employees there self-described their offices as bad dentist. And, and if you know anything about Libby Glass, organization almost 170 years old, Mr. Libby invented glass. He was on a beach somewhere and went, you know what we could totally do with all this sand? It'd be amazing. So you think about that heritage, and then you think of an employee describing their office as bad dentist. Complete disconnect. So how do we start to understand what the core is of the vision, the mission, the values of an organization, and communicate it in the physical space? So I mentioned a little bit about the social part of work and how we think that this is a really, really important part of what we do. Social cohesion is really the most important thing that we do. Think about if you've ever been on a team at work, which is probably also the reason that many of you work on your own now. You've been on that team and there's that one guy, the one guy who's gonna take credit for everything you did. That's me, right, you guys? Yeah, sorry. Because by the way, I did this entire deck myself. Isn't it beautiful? Sorry, Chris. There's that. So start to think about that. Think about the social disconnects of work and how miserable it can make you. So making sure that there's that social cohesion is a critical part of it. So how do we use space in the right way? So we start to look at, for us, it's about developing an agile design. So how do we really understand the organizational trajectory in today's world? It used to be organizations would plan their budgets and hiring and all of those things, and they could look 15 years out into the future and say, this is what we're going to look like, and this is what we're going to do. And since about the crash of 2001, 2002, and then again in 2008, organizations are at maybe 3 years. Sometimes they'll look 5 years out. So again, if your space lasts 30 years, your technology curve is 18 years, and your organizational strategy is only 3 to 5 years, that's a lot of weight on my shoulders to not screw up a huge multi-million-dollar investment. So making sure that space is agile is a really, really critical part of it. It flexes, it changes, it adapts to the needs of an organization, and how does it adapt to needs that are unpredictable to an organization? The next one is really about making mobility easy. We've cut the cord. I just gave up cable. How many people have given up cable TV at home? Oh my word, it's like there's this new sense of freedom in my life. I love it. But when you start to think about, I can now watch Weekend at Bernie's on my phone, on Netflix. I don't need to be anywhere. Think of how mobile we've truly become and the amount of content that we can take in a very mobile behavior that before required us to have one of these plugs in something somewhere. Well, the office is just as mobile. So how do we start to allow people to be mobile in a space, embrace their technology, and not have to sit in that corner cube? You've all been in that cube with that really deep corner that was designed for that CRT monitor that disappeared 20 years ago, but the thing is still there, and you're like, oh God. So how do we start to allow people to be mobile and move throughout the space and embrace the technology tools and that ability of on-demand content anywhere? And then looking to consider the future now. That's really what we are paid to do. We're paid to come in and take a look at what is your current state? What's going on in your organization right now? What are the cultural what's the cultural situation of your organization? And then Mr. CEO, Mr. CFO, Mr. CX, whatever you are, what do you want this place to be? How do you want these people to behave? How do you want them to share information? What do you want your culture to be? Are you gonna lose the shirt and tie finally? We're crossing our fingers for that one for a client. What are the cultural changes you want to make? Because a lot of organizations use the opportunity for new space to adjust their culture, which makes our job really, really difficult. Because we're not the culture police. That's a whole other group of people to bring into your organization. But a lot of companies use that opportunity to start to make cultural shifts and cultural changes as well. So how do we make sure that we, as an organization, are looking to consider the future now and taking a really hard look at the current state and understanding how organizations operate today, and then where they want to be is really the essence of what we do. And helping tie that bridge, building a bridge to that future state, is the work that we do on a daily basis. So that is really, this quote is really what we do, because we're done sitting in a cube. I'm done sitting in a cube. Most of my clients, the individual contributors at most of my clients' firms, are done sitting in cubes. Again, I got on-demand information wherever I want, whenever I want. So I need to move to a space that best supports me. And most of the time, that 8x8 cubicle with the 72 high-inch walls that's beige, or God forbid it's still like teal and mauve. That's when I started in the world of work, it was teal and mauve. That interior designer who came up with that color palette should be hopefully burning in hell somewhere. So, sorry if you like teal and mauve, because I know it's coming back into style. So, but how do we start to allow people to choose their spaces based on their task? And that's really the critical part of work, as we see it as we move into the future, is employees, staffers, individual contributors, as we refer to them, are wanting that, are expecting that. And we look at a number of different ways that people learn how to work. Think about, where did you actually learn to work? Where did you learn to do stuff and produce a product or a document or whatever that was? It's generally high school and college. So it's one of the things that we look at is how are young learners learning to produce work? Because the expectation of that is what really drives our expectation in the workplace. So how I work in a group in university really starts to drive the expectations that I have when I get into the office. And the disconnect right now is that all of those the millennials, I'm not going to ask because you're all millennials. Well, not all of us, right, Susie Austin? Most of us are. There are a couple baby boomers here. I'll point out one. Sorry. I'm like smack dab in the middle of Gen X. I'm like Reality Bites was my life. Anyway, most of you don't even know what that movie was. God. I've completely rambled. It's off the tracks. I don't know what to do. So we're just going to move on. So these are the 4 big questions that we ask, because this is what drives the solution. We're very research-based, my particular group, but what drives our organization as a whole is very solution-based. We want to make sure that when we walk away and that you unlock that door on the first day and you walk into your new space, that we truly, truly understood these 4 questions. And the first one is, who's there? Who are these people? What do they do? What are their expectations around work? Because the guy who's the underwriter in an insurance company and the guy who's a graphic designer making beautiful, beautiful things have 2 very different expectations on the world of work. And guess what? They could actually work in the same organization. So understanding the breadth of the type of talent within an organization is really, really critical. What do they do? Seems pretty easy, but again, if we haven't truly nailed what does this organization do when they move in, the space isn't going to function the way they need to. So if we go back to that example of the insurance underwriter and the graphic designer, the outcome of their job is very, very different. And the way they share information or the way they don't share information is really, really critical. So workspace needs to support that variety of behavior. When do they work is really, really critical. Who's in the space? What time do they come in? That underwriter's probably there at 7:30 in the morning, like some big finance nerd. The guy who's doing the graphics is probably rolling in 10:30, 11 o'clock, and he's going to stay there until 9 or 10. He's going to work 15, maybe 20 hours a week or 20 hours a day on something they're super passionate about. So when do they work is a really, really important thing to understand within an organization, because the building may need to support multiple behaviors and multiple shifts within the facility. And then where do they work? Where do they work today? What is the current state? What are the pain points? What are the things that make me miserable about showing up to work every day, and then solving for them? So where does someone spend the amount of time that they do in the workplace is a really important part of the work as well. So I like to end with this quote because I think it really starts to give us a vision of what we can expect work and workplace to be like in the future. We've moved beyond corporate America telling us how to work. You're going to sit in that chair and you're going to be there for 8.5 hours a day, and you're going to go take your smoke break at 9:30, and you're going to eat lunch at 12:15 to 1:15, and then you might get another smoke break or a coffee break at 3:30, and then you can leave at 5:30. And if you've been here for 25 years, then you can park a little bit closer. And if you're the new guy, you got to walk all the way to the back of the parking lot. We're all past that. So organizations really need to start to understand that personal interaction and the personalization of space is going to be really, really critical to their success as we move forward. Because again, how many of you here depend solely on yourself for your well-being? Like if you don't work, you don't get to pay the rent. So a third of the room, you left because of that. You left an organization because it didn't personally reflect who you were and you knew you could do it better. So organizations need to start to understand this shift in the world of work, this shift to the serial entrepreneur, this shift to the independent contractor. Because if organizations are going to continue to be successful, we've got to start to embrace this personalization of space. So that's my spiel. Thank you very much. I didn't want to end on this slide, so I'll end on this slide.